Hi everybody, welcome to Saturday Live at the Backyard Bird Center. With tomorrow being Mother's Day, happy birthday to all the moms out there. Thought we would do the program on eggs. It's a question, lots of questions that we get about eggs, and it's a very, very broad topic. So I'm going to do my best just to kind of answer the most basic questions we get about that. And remember, you can always come by the store, you can always send me emails, you can always call and ask about if I don't clarify something for you. If you have more questions about any topic that we do here on Saturday Lives, you can go back and watch them also on our website, backyardbirdcenter.com, under the Learn More tab. But today we're going to do eggs. And, you know, there's lots of questions about eggs. One is the size of eggs, so, you know, the different shapes of eggs, what the colors of eggs, how many eggs are laid, things like that. When all of those are highly variable. From the tiny jelly bean or jelly belly type size of an egg of the hummingbird to the quite large sized eggs by Canada geese and wild turkeys. So there's a lot of size differential, and obviously what makes the size of the egg dictates the size of the egg is the ability of the female to carry the egg. She always carries one egg at a time, and when it's developed, and she has to be able to pass that egg through her system. Now, the true exception of this is if you want to look up something truly fascinating, look up the Australian bird, the Kiwi. The Kiwi's egg is half the size of the female whenever she passes it, which has got to be quite painful. But our birds, it's a lot more reasonable to that, and they can fly with their eggs and things like that. So it has to be small enough. So the size of egg definitely depends on the female and their ability to carry it while they're still living their lives and the ability to lay them. Now, typically, the number of eggs that a female will lay is dependent on that bird's lifestyle. Most of our songbirds, like cardinals and blue jays and robins, they have 4, maybe 5 eggs. That they lay at one, and then they incubate them at a time. It's called synchronous hatching. They desire all their babies to hatch at one time. So she'll lay, a female bluebird, for example, will lay 1 egg a day for 4 or 5 days in a row, and then she starts to sit on the eggs to incubate them so that they'll all hopefully hatch about the same time, so all her babies will have equal chance to be fed and will be fledging at the same time. Now, other birds, especially birds of prey, like hawks and eagles, they lay an egg and then they'll start sitting on it. And then they'll lay an egg maybe a couple of days later and then sitting on that one. So that's called asynchronous hatching, in which the first one that hatches will quite often have the advantage over the next 2 or 3 that hatch. They'll be much smaller and they can outcompete for food. And then there's birds like the purple martin. The purple martin has asynchronous hatching because their food sources, flying insects, are so highly variable. Quite often, the first 2 that they lay, if there's a cold snap, those first 2 won't have enough insects, and they might die of starvation early. But then the ones that they laid later will do better because they're more flying insects. So it's very variable in birds. Lots of different theories on survival. Now, another theory that birds have for surviving is the ground nesting birds versus the birds that nest in trees. Our songbirds, like the robins and cardinals, they lay their eggs, and their babies are hatched, and they are helpless. They're blind. Let's see, we've got a nice picture of that, I do believe. Their babies are helpless. They have maybe just a few pin feathers showing through very early. They're blind when they first come out of the egg. They're totally helpless. It takes a high degree of parental care if you're going to raise babies this way. This is called altricial young, in which they depend on the parents heavily. And their time in the egg is the advantage because it takes about 2 weeks for them to hatch from the time mom starts sitting on them to the time that they hatch, and then about 2 more weeks before they're fully feathered and can survive in the wild. And so they went to 2 weeks to fledge, so for the babies to go. Now, if you're a ground nesting bird, say a killdeer, and a killdeer lays their eggs right on the ground, they have to, one, be very camouflaged, and the mom has to protect the eggs there because they're very vulnerable to snakes and coyotes and things like that. Well, those eggs will take 24 days to hatch quite often, almost twice as long as the robin counterpart up in the tree. But whenever her babies hatch and they come out of the egg, then they are already ready to go. They're fully feathered. They can see, they can walk, they have strong leg muscles, and they're ready to feed and pick up a bug on their own or pick up a seed on their own. Those are precocial young is what they're called. And so the time of the egg is quite different from the time of the egg of, say, most of our nesting songbirds. So that's highly variable as well. Now, how about color and the number of eggs that are laid? Well, the birds don't typically lay more eggs than they can take care of. So those altricial young, the ones that are helpless and take lots of attention, a lot of feeding, usually the number of those is between 4 to 5 at the most. These birds that hatch on the ground, like the killdeer, sometimes there's 7, 8, 10, 12. I actually checked a wood duck nest box one time that had 22 eggs in it. Now, I don't know how that female wood duck covered that many eggs, and there are cases where another female wood duck would come along and dump eggs in another bird's nest. That does happen too, but typically ground nesting birds lay more eggs than birds that nest up in trees and things like that. So now, color of eggs is highly variable, but obviously, like we just showed you on the killdeer eggs, they have to be very, very camouflaged. So they have lots of spots and they have ground and color that helps them to hide. Whereas the birds that nest up in trees, like we said originally, this was a house finch nest. They are some speckled, but not super camouflaged like the ground nesting birds. But cavity nesting birds, like the bluebirds, quite often they don't worry about the camouflage because they're inside of a hole, and the mom sits on top of those eggs, so she doesn't have to worry about them being very camouflaged. So the bluebird eggs. So egg color, it varies a lot, but egg shape is pretty classic for around here. We think of chicken eggs, and we elliptical where they're a little bigger on one end and pointed at the other, and a lot of that has to do with them fitting nicely in a circle so the mom can sit on them very effectively. But there are birds that lay very different shaped eggs. Birds of prey, eagles and hawks, their eggs are very round and they're big. They have big giant nests. But think about a bird like a seabird that nests on a rock cliff out on the ocean that has a 300-foot drop right beside them. Their eggs are very pear-shaped, very small at one end, very fat at the other. And the reason for that is if that egg gets bumped, it just rolls in a circle. It doesn't roll off the edge of the cliff down into the ocean. So that's very purposeful why that egg is shaped that way. So, birds, like so many other parts of their lives, the nesting and eggs is highly variable and fascinating to study. And I've only touched the tip of the iceberg here, but hopefully you got some information there that may have answered some questions you may have been having. If you like the videos, please give us a like, share them if you will with your friends, let them know about them. Again, you can go back and check them on back at purebirdcenter.com. They're all on there, the old ones are, so you can check them out on there. Until then, come by and let's talk birds.